There's a lot of rejection stories out there, and I ran across a thread. I was looking for things that talked about, you know, just basically us getting rebuffed, us getting beat down a little bit, and I was surprised at how many of them there were online. And I ran across a particular thread, and I thought I'd start out with this one because we just finished Valentine's Day. And a boy wrote that he was in 4th grade. I was really into a girl named Susan. She was gorgeous. It was Valentine's Day, and I had always been really shy around other people. But I really wanted to find out what the whole girlfriend thing was about. I decided to write this girl a letter and ask her to be my Valentine. I was super proud of myself for having the courage to write such a letter to easily the best looking girl in the grade. Okay, there we go. After recess, I went back into class to find her sitting around her friends. She was reading my note to them, which was embarrassing. Later in school, the kids started coming up to me and saying, "Be my Valentine," and pointing and laughing. I was rather upset. At the end of the day, she finally came up to me and laughed and said no, she never would be my Valentine. I was devastated. For months after that, I was insulted by all the other kids in my school until it got old. Since then, I have not had a good Valentine's Day, and it caused me to be afraid of talking to girls until after I was 16 years old. One guy decided to lighten the thread up a little bit, and he shared this. He said, "A girl literally jumped away from me, gave me a look as if I had stabbed her with a knife, and muttered, 'No, no, 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 no,' under her breath. All I did was say hello." That is a little bit of a rejection. Another boy wrote, "I had a chemistry class with a girl, and she was in my lab group, so we spent a lot of time talking together. I got to the point where after lab we would walk to the parking lot together after every class. Finally," that didn't make sense, but they walked together a lot apparently after this. "So finally one day I decided to ask her out to dinner. So at the end of our walk I did. She technically didn't reject me because she started laughing too hard to even say a word. I actually waited for about 15 seconds to see if she would even stop laughing to say something, but she never stopped laughing, and I eventually walked away." Those were mostly guys, but it happens to girls too. A young lady wrote, "Middle school. My best friend and I planned that she would slip that I liked a mutual friend of ours at school, my first crush, that I liked him." There we go. "I knew it was coming, and I was sweating bullets. The end of the day comes around, and she slips him a note during English class that says that she heard that I like him. I, of course, am not supposed to know. Out of the corner of my eye, I'm trying to be sneaky, of course. I see him read it, get this disgusted look on his face, show his buddy sitting next to him, and they both look over at me and start laughing. I see my crush saying something along the lines of, 'Ew,' and my whole world came crashing down. I tried to hide my face for the next hour because my friend saw the whole thing too. But I'm pretty sure a large part of me died that day." And this kind of thing doesn't just happen in romantic relationships. One boy wrote, I went to a new school in 4th grade. You'll have to forgive me, I just realized this morning, I actually need glasses to sit here and read this now. I've finally fallen off the precipice. I am officially old. No, it's okay, baby. It's okay. I have a little dignity. I don't want to wear your glasses. I'll wait till I can bring mine. They look a little better. Not much, but a little. Boy, he's a new kid at school, 4th grade, didn't know anybody, and he walked up, he had watched a group of guys gather, pick teams, and play football every day at recess. So one day he finally built up the courage and went to play with them. I stood there as they selected team captains and proceeded to pick teams from the remaining boys standing in the circle. I realized that I was new and I'd probably be picked last. I was okay with that. Each turn, the captains would scan the group, make eye contact with me, but I knew that they wouldn't pick me until the very end. Finally, I was the last one not picked, as expected. Then they dispersed and they kicked off over my head and just ran past me standing in the middle of the field. I didn't know what to do with myself. Had I not heard the guy who last picked me? Was this a mistake? As they continued to play around me, I knew this was not the case, and I slumped over and trudged off the field. He finished with "Kids are mean." And here's the funny part, or the sad part, really, I guess. I could go on with these stories for hours. I mean, this page was unbelievably long, and there were a boatload of pages attached to it. And the sad part of what I just shared is, if we were to walk everyone here up and give you the mic, you could probably share at least one story that would be something similar. We all have our own stories of rejection. And that's probably, though, just because we're not super rich or cool or super intelligent or famous or something like that. That's probably why we've all been rejected. So I looked into it a little bit. And Steve Jobs, who started Apple computers and helped revolutionize our world for all of you iMac users and iPod users and whatever else they figured out to do users. He started this whole thing, built it up, and made it super successful, and then his own company fired him. The company he started fired him. Don't feel sorry for him, though, because he eventually got them all back, got the company back, and fired all of them. Scary, scary world. A teenager's low popularity convinced her that she was not attractive. Her name was Claudia Schiffer. She's a top fashion model and hailed by many as one of the most beautiful women in the world. Stan Smith, the #1 tennis player in the world from 72 to 73, was rejected as too awkward and clumsy to be a ball boy at a Davis Cup match. John Creasy sold over 60 million crime novels, but not until he first received an unbroken succession of 743 rejections. That's a lot of rejection. Edmund Hillary's gym instructor, his comment when he walked in the room was, "What will they send me next?" And he, of course, was the guy who conquered Mount Everest. Fred Astaire's first dance edition, these were the notes written about him. Balding, skinny, can dance a little. Beethoven's music teacher declared him as hopeless at composing. Albert Einstein's parents feared he was subnormal, not abnormal, subnormal. As Billy Graham preached, a missionary's daughter battled an almost uncontrollable urge to run out of the meeting. It was his future wife. I think my poor wife feels that on a consistent basis as well. And it wasn't conviction that made her want to run. She was appalled at his preaching. That's funny. An invitation was extended to witness one of humanity's most historic events, the Wright brothers' first flight in their heavier-than-air machine, and 5 whole people showed up to see the first flight. 38 times publishers turned down Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind. And this one I just thought was hilarious. Walt Disney got fired for lacking ideas. There's a lot of rejection in our world, even for the super talented, even for the super beautiful and the gifted and the uber successful. And I think, okay, where does that leave us? Most of us are just relatively normal folks. I mean, you guys are above average. There's no doubt this group is above average. But none of us are Einstein. None of us are Disney. And they all got rejected. The most gifted at their worlds got rejected. And some of them over and over and over again. Where does that leave us? I know that I personally have a fair amount of rejection as I look back on my life. And I'm guessing that you guys do as well. I had a group of Grace's friends over to a Valentine's party that Grace had here this past week. And during the Valentine's Day party, I never stop research, by the way. I asked this group of middle school girls, now you got to understand, these are middle school girls. That's one of the toughest groups in the whole world when it comes to rejection. I asked them what they thought of rejection, and a young girl by the name of Megan, she's one of the twins, Becca and Megan, and both really bright girls, but this is what she said, and she just rattled it off, and very glibly and kind of happy-go-lucky, and I was like, wow. Here's what she said, I had to write it down. It hurts at first, but you get used to it. I was like, wow. I don't know if that's good because, she's so, ready to go with it and encouraged by her great attitude, or if I should be bummed out that that's the world that they have to live in. And for that matter, the world that we have to live in. It hurts, but you get used to it. And I just want to throw this out also. Those are the popular girls. I mean, a lot of those girls that were there that, Becca made, they're like at the top of the food chain, but that's what they live with. All of them get beat up. Rejection is just a part of their world, and it's a part of our worlds too. It ties into most of our rational fears. We have a lot of irrational fears, but we have a lot of fears that we have good reason to have that fear. And most of those rational fears that we have good reason to fear are tied to rejection. You know why public speaking is so feared? It's so feared, number one in a lot of people's lists, it's so feared because people are afraid that they're going to get up here and do what I did last week. They're going to bomb. Big, ugly explosions everywhere. Last week, if you missed it, be thankful. But then they're afraid that they're going to get rejected for it. Fortunately for me, my approach is similar to Megan's. I've gotten used to it. You guys, if I bomb, you can come tell me I bombed. I'm good with it. It's okay. But rejection is a part of our world. And even when you get used to it, sometimes the fear of rejection is still debilitating. Like asking that girl or guy out that makes your heart skip a beat when they walk by. Now this is not for you married folks. Okay, this is for the younger crowd. Knew they were going to be here. But honestly, how hard is that? I mean, maybe for some of you it's not. But I was thinking about it, and I thought, when I was young and ignorant and innocent, man, I could stand in front of thousands of people. I could teach, I could speak, I could act, I could sing, I could do none of that fazed me. But oh my goodness, I could not ask a girl out. That literally was the single scariest thing on the planet for me. In retrospect, it was probably undoubtedly good because it saved me a lot of money, heartache, frustration, time, etc. in the process of finding that woman right there. Had to find the perfect one. But relationships can be scary. And the funny thing is they're not only scary to start, they can also be scary after they've begun. Author Anne Sexton wrote this. She wrote, and she's saying that she said this. She said, "Do you like me?" No answer. Silence bounced, fell off his tongue and sat between us and clogged my throat. It slaughtered my trust. We exchanged blind words, and I did not cry. I did not beg, but blackness filled my ears. Blackness lunged in my heart, and something that had been good, sort of a kindly oxygen, turned into a gas oven. Our rational fears. They are rational because sometimes we get rejected. And we've all got some sort of fears, and again, most of them center on this idea of being pushed away. Studies say that fear of rejection is there for a good reason. The same area of the brain, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, is active when people are experiencing physical pain and emotional pain. So literally the same part of your brain that's being activated when somebody's punching you is being activated when somebody says, I don't like you. It's painful. And the weird thing is that they've done these experiments. And they found that the rejection, it doesn't have to be somebody that you know. It doesn't have to be somebody that you love. Folks, it can be a computer game that you're playing. And the computer game can reject you. And it causes you to go, ugh! It brings out those emotions. A computer game can stress you out and hurt your feelings. That's pretty funny. It releases stress hormones into our body. And rejection leaves us with feelings of pain and frustration, jealousy, and even resignation, despair, and sometimes long-term depression. It's painful to be rejected. Lance Armstrong said this. He said, a boo is a lot louder than a cheer. And if you're not married today, you'll one day find out if you say something negative, it will take you a month and 1,000 positives to make up for one negative. It's true. It is true. A boo is a lot louder than a cheer. And this is our subject this morning. Dealing with rejection. Not in frustration, not in anger, and not in jealousy. Because that's the way everyone else, that's the way the world deals with rejection. This morning I want us to look at how Jesus taught us to deal with rejection. We're looking at Matthew chapter 10. And the first part of Matthew chapter 10, he has just given his disciples the power to do miracles. And then he sends them out to preach about his coming kingdom. And if you remember, he said, you know, you've been given much, now go give much. And these are the instructions that he gives them, just following that statement. He says, don't take any money in your money belts. No gold, silver, or even copper coins. Don't carry a traveler's bag with a change of clothes and sandals, or even a walking stick. Don't hesitate to accept hospitality, because those who work deserve to be fed. Whenever you enter a city or village, search for a worthy person and stay in his home until you leave town. When you enter the home, give it your blessing. If it turns out to be a worthy home, let your blessing stand. If it is not, take back your blessing. If any household or town refuses to welcome you, if they reject you, if they refuse to welcome you and listen to your message, shake its dust from your feet as you leave. I tell you the truth, the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah will be better off than such a town on Judgment Day. So here's what Jesus is saying. He's saying, don't over-prepare, go. And that ties with what he just sent them out to go and preach. And he's saying, okay, don't go get your 4-year degree. Don't go to seminary. Okay, I just told you to go preach the word. Go do what I just told you to do. Go preach. Go. Don't over-prepare. If he were to do that today, we would set up a school immediately to properly filter everyone through. So, no, he's saying, if I've called you, you go do it. And that's a lesson for all of us when it comes to sharing our faith. We just need to do it. You don't have to be Billy Graham to share your faith. You just need to go and do it. Then he said, find an almsgiver. Find someone who is a compassionate person. The word there for, where am I at here? A worthy person. That was actually an almsgiver. An almsgiver was someone who gave money to the poor. They would give money to folks that came in and begged. He said, find a compassionate and good person that will care for you and stay with them. And while you're there, bless their home. He's saying, you're working for me, so accept the hospitality you're shown. It's God's provision. And then he says, but if you get refused, if you get rejected as my ambassador, one who represents me, just shake it off and go on. He says, don't linger, don't fight. Don't sit there and wrestle with them over it. He says, just go. and continue to preach my kingdom is coming someplace else. He says, and here's what happens to those who reject you. When judgment day comes, it will be better for them if they had been from Sodom and Gomorrah than if they had been from that town or from that house that rejected you. Sodom and Gomorrah, better to be Sodom and Gomorrah. For those of you that don't know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah was a horribly evil place that God had determined that he was going to destroy. But there was a man there by the name of Lot that was Abraham's nephew, and God sent 2 angels to go and rescue Lot and his family and pull them out before he destroyed the towns. And when the angels came, they stayed with Lot. And the men of that city were so wicked, they came and started beating on his door in the night and said, "Send them out, because we're going to abuse them and basically rape them." And Lot said, "No, you can't do this." And the men were saying, "If you don't, we're just going to tear your house down and blah, blah, blah. We're going to do much worse." They were just threatening. And the angels struck him with blindness. So the angels grabbed Lot and his family, and they took off out of there. God then rained down fire on Sodom and Gomorrah. Totally wiped and destroyed them. I think some archaeologists found some remnants and said it looked like a hand just scooped up the town and just turned it upside down. But fire rained down from heaven. And some people say, well, it was probably a volcano, or it was an asteroid impact, or maybe God just rained down fire from heaven. But whatever, there were big chunks of fire that was coming down and consumed that area. That whole plain got destroyed. Today, and a lot of people think this happened during this event, the Dead Sea completely covers with water where they once were. So they were destroyed by fire, and now they're underwater. And the response was, it would be better to be from Sodom and Gomorrah than to be from one of these towns. Ow. That's pretty tough. Now, let's say you were a disciple. And Jesus gave you these instructions, and so, rightly so, you just headed off. He said, go, and so you're going. You go out, and you're headed off right then and there to preach the gospel. You go to your first town, you preach. Kingdom of heaven is near, and they reject you. What would your response be? They're like, shut up. Really? We've heard this stupid stuff before. Get out of here. Don't make us throw you out. What would your response be? Are you angry? Are you hurt? Or would you remember what Jesus had just said? Might you actually be brokenhearted for him? I think if they had truly watched and listened to Jesus and believed what he was saying about love and forgiveness and grace and this coming judgment, I believe they would have been sad. I know I would have been sad. Even if people have been rude and mean, I still would have been a little brokenhearted. Because if you love people, you aren't callous to their pain. And I think of the greatest example of that. Jesus was in the middle of the crucifixion. He's hanging on the cross, and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That should be our attitude. So here's my question. Why do we get hurt and angry when we get rejected? Even when it comes to sharing God with people, there's still a little hurt and anger when people reject you. Why? I'm asking because here's what God is saying in the scripture. God's saying that if someone rejects you, he rejects them. pretty heavy. But after all, what is a child but your heart walking around outside your body? And what happens when someone is mean to one of your children? When someone is mean to one of your children, it fundamentally changes your relationship with that person. When someone's mean to one of my kids, I begin to push them away. I begin to separate myself and my family from them in order to keep my kids safe. And God deals with people in a similar fashion. If they're mean to us, He takes it personally. It kind of preempts my anger. Hebrews 10:30 says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." So what should our response actually be when we're rejected, especially when we're rejected for God? Luke 6:28 says, "Bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you." That's what our response is supposed to be. And you think, how can we possibly take such a high road when we're being mistreated and being rejected? We can, or at least the way that I'm able to dig myself out sometimes. And I say sometimes because, folks, goodness knows, I stand up here and preach all the time, but I feel like Paul sometimes. I think, I'm the chiefest of sinners. This one sometimes, or I try at least to keep under control, be gracious under fire, but it's not always easy. But when I'm able to get the best of it, it's because I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to protect me, because that's not my job. You don't have to protect you, because that's not your job. It's God's job to defend, to support, and to protect. And it sounds strange to say it, but God says that vengeance is His. Judgment is His. Hell is His. The emotion that we should feel when rejected is sadness, and not for ourselves, but for those who would attempt to hurt us. Because God's got us. He'll never leave us. He'll never forsake us. He'll always be there with us. We are the apple of His eye, His precious possession, His beloved child, the betrothed of Christ. You and I are safe. In the deepest and fullest and truest sense of that word, we are truly safe in God's hands. And it's an eternal safety. So don't waste your time with anger and hurt. We should be spending our time caring and serving and sharing God's love and grace with others. Romans 12, verse 17 through 21 says, "Never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone will see that you are honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. Instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. Don't let evil conquer you. Conquer evil by doing good. That should always be our mantra, even in hurt, even in pain. Martin Luther King said it like this. He said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. So when hurt comes, and it will come, respond with kindness. And when rejections come, and they will come, respond with love. You can only overcome evil by doing good. And you can only get rid of darkness by shining light. The remedy for rejection is love, forgiveness, and grace. Conquer evil by doing good. Let's pray.